Hey, do you know what a tooltip is? Well, a tooltip is a way for you to display extra information in the form of a pop-up window when certain elements of your web page are hovered over with the mouse cursor. So let's say you have a link that people can click on, or let's say you have some text or a vocab word and you want there to be more information given about it. Well, when the user hovers the mouse cursor over that element, a little speech bubble pops up, and then it'll tell you where that link is going to take you to, or it's going to give you a definition of that vocab word, or however you can imagine using this feature. When used in moderation and when not overly done, I think it can be a real effective and engaging way for you to have your users interact with your website. So let's go ahead and get started. Our Dreamweaver projects folder, where we've been storing these, is where I made a Tooltips folder, and I just made it all lowercase, all one word. Then here in Dreamweaver, going up to Site and New Site, our little window pops open here. Select that folder and then find your Tooltips folder that you just created and select it and go to Select Folder. Where it says site name, that's where we can name this, so we'll just go ahead and call this Tooltips Example. The page we're making for this is going to be very simple in nature, just so you can take what we've created and apply easily to any other web page that you have made. So with that, we'll go to Create New. New document, HTML, none for the framework. For the title, we will type in Tooltip Example and create. Finally, we can save this as a web page. We'll go to File, Save As, make sure you're in the correct folder, and we obviously want to call this index.html because this is our quote-unquote homepage. Well, there is save. On this tutorial, I'll be using the code area a little bit more than what I have in the past few with Dreamweaver, and that's just because it's easier for me to navigate through this in that way. You can still feel free to use your Insert tab in your CSS Designer tab as much as you want. It'll still be easy to follow through. As we can see here up here in the head section, we already have our meta-care set and our title in there for us. Dreamweaver does that for us automatically. Underneath that, then I am going to use the meta and then name equals description. And then after those quotation marks, but still in those angle brackets, I'm going to type in content equals quotation marks and example of using tooltips for your web page. That way, when you look back at this page later, if you're thinking, you know, this does not look like a regular web page, what the heck's going on, you at least have that information to help you out with it. Down here in the body, we're ready to go ahead and begin this. So at the very top of the body, we will go ahead and we'll enter in a header. And in the header, we can go over to our heading section and we'll add in a H1. And in that H1, we'll type in Tooltips in Action. That should work nicely for that. Underneath the header, then we'll go over here and we will add an article. You don't need a class or anything for this particular article. In the article, we'll put in another heading, but instead of an H1, we'll select an H2. And in the H2, we'll type in check this out. After the H2, we will also include a paragraph in here. And the paragraph is going to say something like, here is a sentence that contains content, And then after that, we're going to type in, now we have the rest of our content. This is going to be one paragraph, and we'll just pretend that this is like a long body area of our web page, just for the ease of spacing and readability on your part. I'm going to enter this down, but as we can see, it's still the same paragraph. It's still behaving the same way up here. It's just so I can fit everything without having to scroll laterally on my window. Now in here between those two lines of the paragraphs, I'm putting an extra space in there. We're going to use another element in here, and this one's going to be called span. And a span is basically where we are just kind of defining a set of content that is within a chunk of larger content. So in this case, we have a paragraph. We're going to be selecting a series of words that are a part of this paragraph. So I'm going to open up this span element, and I am going to give this one a class because we might use another span here in the footer a little bit later. We'll go class equals quotation marks tooltip, and then after those quotation marks I'm going to use tab index equals quotation marks 0. Alright, once we have that on there, then I'm going to type in hover over this different looking text. Alright, now I'm going to open up another span, and if I just open up a plain span, it's going to close it automatically for me, and that actually helps me out, so we'll leave it there. And in between that new opening of span and this closing of the span, I'm going to type in bruh. That looks good. Now I need to close up this initial span that I opened up, so I'll use my slash, my angle bracket slash, but lowercase span, and I can backspace this to right here, and we should be in good shape now. Alright, this is everything we're going to need for our tooltip right here. This is our paragraph, and then this area here is where we're going to be using our tooltip, because if you look up here, this looks awkward, you know, where we just have no space after this, and then we have a word in there and everything else. So we need to have something done with that so that acts the way that we want it to act. Before we get to that, then I thought it would also be kind of cool if after the article, but before the very end here, we can place in this a footer. So if we select footer over here, we don't need anything special for that. We'll add a paragraph in the footer, and we'll type in page created by, and we'll use our name, and then we're going to use and copy semicolon. And so we've done this part a million times, but just for the ease of time in past tutorials, we've just typed in the year. But maybe you don't want to go in and manually change that year all the time. Just have one thing less to worry about in your life. Wouldn't that be great? In order to do that, we can use another angle bracket here, and we'll add another span. And this one we will give it an ID of year. And then it's going to be right inside that paragraph. And then right after we open that span, we're going to close the span. There's nothing going on in between there right now, and that's fine. It seems weird, but we're going to get to that here in a second. So underneath the footer, and before the part of the closing of the body down there, we can now add a script element. We've done this very little in class so far. We will get into this later, like using JavaScript and those things. And this is the same kind of thing, but instead of making us like a slideshow, I believe is what we used it for last time, This time we're going to make a script that automatically puts the data up here. And I was supposed to put an and sign right here as I look at that. There we go. And copy semicolon. There we go. All right, so I had the @ sign on there, a little typo on my part. Okay, now we should be good with that. For the script, I can go down here and I can type in document dot get element by ID, and this is kind of weird capitalization if you haven't done this a lot before, but it is just the way that this has to be. After that, we're going to put in our parentheses, and we'll use the single quotation marks, and we're going to type in year. Right after those quotation marks and after those parentheses, we'll use dot text content, and then we'll put a space and an equal and a space, and then we'll type in new, and then a space, and then we'll use date with empty parentheses after it, and then we'll put in a period, and we'll use get full year empty parentheses. This is another kind of one of those weird capitalizations, so double check that, pause this if you need to make sure you get that right. If it's not 100% correct, it's not going to show up properly. I'll use Control S to save that. And then if I go here to my web page, then I can see that the current year is showing up here, and then you never have to go in and change that ever again. You just define it right here, or you place it in the span right there, and then it's going to be called from the script that always goes right before the closing of the body of your web page. All right, that is the first part that we needed to do, just getting our HTML over with. And now we're going to style this so that the tooltip works properly. File, save all if you need to. Then we'll go over to CSS Designer, and we will add a new source, create a new CSS file, and go to Browse. And over here, make sure you're in your Tooltips folder, and then we always call this styles.css. Then we can click Save, make sure that link is selected there, and then we'll go to OK. Now, if you want to, you can have this selected, and you can go to your selectors and add them this way. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go over here to the Styles tab, and I'm going to type in my CSS in this area right here. We'll go ahead and begin with the body. So we'll use our fancy brackets here, body, and we'll start with margin 0, and we'll go display flex, and we'll go flex hyphen direction is going to be column, and we'll use min height of 100 VH. This doesn't have anything to do with the tooltip, but it does have to do with our footer being pushed all the way to the bottom of the page. That's something that we've recently talked about, so I at least wanted to kind of re-emphasize that and review it a little bit right here where it fits in natural. Then we can finish that up by going up here to footer, and we'll use our fancy brackets, and then go margin hyphen top, and we'll use auto, and that's going to push the content down to the bottom of the page. And I do usually like content in the footer aligned center, so we'll go text hyphen align center. And here we go. If it doesn't show up right away, you may just need to go up here and go File, Save All, and just make sure that your index, source code, and your styles is saved. Because when we added the CSS document over here, it does add the link href reference right here in this area on this line 7. So you may need to save that and then try refreshing again. Alright, once the footer is done, we're ready for the actual tooltip stuff. I'm going to press enter several times here. The reason why is just so you don't have to look at the bottom of the screen, to make it a little easier for you to follow along as I go through this. Using some comments here with that /* and then the */ and then we can type our comments in between there. We can use those as notes for us in case we want to go back and make any modifications to this code later on. In here I'll type in tooltip code. Alright, so to begin, I'm going to make a reference to that span of the tooltip that we made before. So we do that just by span.tooltip. That was what we used for the class. And then we'll use our fancy brackets after that. And to make that text stand out a little bit more, you would use whatever colors that work with your brand. For me, I'm just going to use an orange color to make it stand out. So # FFA500 semicolon. That should work nicely. Alright, position relative is going to help it be placed where we need it to be placed. And cursor pointer. So when people are hovering over it, it turns into a pointer instead of our regular cursor if needed. Alright, once that is done, we'll go ahead and we'll add another comment. Underline when hovering. Alright, so sometimes on a web page you may want that link to do something else. You know, maybe the text is going to be bold or whatever. We're going to make it be underlined here. We'll type in here span.tooltip : hover, and then we'll put in a comma. And we can also call for if we're going to focus over it too. So we could say span.tooltip focus, and then we'll use our fancy brackets after that. Right. Scroll down here just a little bit for you. And what's going to happen when we do that? Well, we would go text-decoration underline. Normally we have our links already underlined, and then we've been saying text decoration none. So we're kind of going the reverse order of that in this example. Going underneath that, we'll put in some more comments here. And in this one, we'll type in show tooltip when hovering. I'm actually going to just copy this part right here, and I'm going to paste it in this location. And after that, instead of text decoration, I'm going to type in display inline. And then I'll go ahead and close that fancy bracket down at the very bottom. Alright, for the next one we'll go with another comment. And in here I'm going to place creating the tooltip bubble. Span.tooltip space span. So this will be for the second span area, like the bruh part that is identified in our tooltip. So to begin, we don't want people to see that right away. So we'll go display none. And then we'll go with width. You can choose whatever you want for this. Depending on the message you want in there, that's going to determine the size of this probably to make it fit in there nicely. You just want to kind of remember what that number it is and make sure it's that you can divide it by 2, because we're going to need to be able to do that later on in this tutorial. We want to change the background color. And again, this is just what I'm doing here. You could use your brand's colors for yours, but I'm going to make the background color 00000. And then for the color, I'm going to go $FFF just to have the text be white. I do want the text to be centered in there. text align center. And then I do want there to be a slight radius around the border. So border radius, we'll go 6 pixels here. And then we'll go padding, and we'll put some 5 pixel padding above and below the content, but then we'll have 0 padding for the sides, because we're already probably going to have some room in there. We can always add to that later if it doesn't look quite right. Underneath that, we will use position absolute, and we will use a z index of 1. Now the z index determines, like, if you have multiple elements that might be overlapping. Sometimes people might have the header staying in one location and it's always at the top of your window no matter what, instead of it just disappearing when you scroll down far enough. Sometimes people don't want the header to be below the pop-up. Like if you want your header to be above it, even when it's overlapping, then what you would do is you would give your header a z-index of 2, or any number that's higher than 1 in this case, and then it would show up. If you want this to show up higher than the header, then you would just leave it like this. The example we're using today, the header scrolls with it, so we're not going to run into that problem. But I did want you at least to be aware of that if that is something that you run into when you play with this further. After the z-index, then I'll use bottom 100%, and then I will use left of 50%, and this is going to help position it. And the last thing then we need to do for it to position in the middle of the selection is we want to go margin hyphen left, and this is where we want to use a negative value, like 1/2 of this times -1. So I'm going to go -100 because half of 200 is 100, and then we want the negative value of that, and then I will type in px and then a semicolon. One thing that we'll need to add here that I didn't think about just a second ago is after the span.tooltip hover on this section right here, then I do need to put a space and a greater than sign and span. And then down here after focus, I'm going to need to do the same thing. Now we should be good. Alright, so with those additions made and this section right here, we'll save all. I'm going to go here to my web page, and if I hover over this, we can see where this is starting to take place a little bit. Now, I like the effect of it looking like a little bubble with an arrow pointing to it. You can leave it like this if you want, but if you want to go the extra effort to make it look a little bit better, then what we can do, and we'll type in styling for tooltip arrow. Alright, now for that, it's not as long as the one above it. We just go span.tooltip space span : after. So that's kind of a wild one. So you've probably seen why I prefer to just type this in here instead of using the CSS designer over on the side. And in here I'll type in content, and then after the colon I will use just empty quotation marks. So I don't want there to be any content in this section. It's just going to be a shape. Then I'll go position is going to be absolute. The top is going to be 100%. The left is going to be 50%. Margin left is going to be our 6 pixels. And border width is going to be 6 pixels. And the border style is going to be solid. And then when we do that, that's basically going to make a rectangle underneath it. And so to make it more of a triangle, we could do something like this. We can go border hyphen color, and then we're going to use $0000000 or whatever you wanted to use for the background color of your bubble above. And then I'm going to type in, no semicolon, but then I'm going to type in transparent, transparent, transparent to make those other elements transparent. And then after that last transparent, I'll put in my semicolon here. Alright, so now let's open this up. We'll refresh our page. When we look at it now, we have a little speech bubble underneath there that looks a little bit better. If I switch this and I want to change the alignment a little bit, let me try -6 for margin left and save it and refresh my page now. There we go. That looks better. Okay, so you can play around with those values and all those different kinds of things, but that there is a tooltip. So you could, like I said before, use it as an example to give directions or more information to your users who are visiting your web page. You could make a little quiz web page that has like definitions, and when you mouse over the definition, it tells you what the word is if you want to make something that's going to help you study for something in school. Or you could simply just use it where if it's with a hyperlink, then it says this takes you to my landing page, or whatever you want to use it for. Pretty cool, pretty easy to incorporate into your pages. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if there's anything more that you want to learn, I'm always up for suggestions for new ideas for tutorials. I appreciate you all watching, and I hope you all have a great day.